Hello and welcome back to Foreign Correspondents. I'm Sorang, and joining me here in the studio is our panel of foreign journalists. Welcome to the program. Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.
South Korea's long-standing anti-abortion laws are set to be lifted at the end of next year. While women's rights activists are celebrating this move, some religious groups have expressed their disappointment over the decision. So on this week's edition of Foreign Correspondents, we sit down with our panel of foreign journalists to suss through the numerous outstanding issues regarding South Korea's lifting of its anti-abortion ban. On April 11, South Korea's constitutional court ruled that the country's long-standing anti-abortion laws were unconstitutional.
주문 형법 제269조 제1항 제270조 제1항 중 의사에 관한 부분은 모두 헌법에 합치되지 아니한다. 이 조항들은 2020년 12월 31일을 시한으로 입법자가 개정할 때까지 계속 적용된다.
With this verdict, abortion will no longer be criminalized after being outlawed and punishable for the past 66 years. South Korean lawmakers have until the end of next year to make the necessary revisions that reflect the court's verdict. So, what are your overall thoughts on this verdict?
Well, South Korea is one of the few industrialized countries that criminalizes abortion. So I think a lot of pro-choice activists see this as an important, long overdue decision.
So, long overdue, Fred?
And Korea is a very patriarchal country, patriarchal society. So I think it says a lot on how women's rights are improving and how the current society is changing. And there is something else that is important. I mean, there is a huge hypocrisy because there is a lot of illegal abortion taking place in Korea. So basically the decision of the Constitutional Court is just recognizing what's happening and trying to protect women better.
Okay, and Yehun?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a landmark victory for women's rights. It's a law that's dating from 1953, which now is ruled unconstitutional, and I think that's mainly because the judges recognize that free choice for women is crucial, and I think in a society like South Korea, that's a major advancement.
Okay. Now, the international media has followed the issue very closely. Why do you think the international media is so interested in this issue?
I mean, that's true. I was surprised even myself by the very strong interest from the French media about this issue. I think it just showed that, first, women's rights are an important issue to a lot of people in the world, and that there is Korea now is more in the spotlight. Like, what's happening in Korea matters to a lot of people, more than before.
Fred, you've written a story yourself on this issue. Could you tell us more about that?
Oh, so I was in front of the Constitutional Court before the decision was announced. You had the pro-life on one side, the pro-choice on the other side, like shouting slogans at each other. And when the decision was announced, of course, the pro-choice were very happy, so I interviewed a couple of them, got some reaction, and then rushed to the press center to try to file my story as soon as possible.
And as you mentioned, the French media were very interested, so
Yeah.
I'm sure you got to work with a lot of the French media.
Yeah, it's true. So I work for the French national radio, and we have different channels. And it doesn't happen very often when all the radio channels, they all wanted a story. It was impressive actually. So it shows that the issue. And at that day, it was not a slow news day. There was many things happening that day in the other parts of the world, but still they wanted to broadcast a story about this decision.
Right, so it shows you the level of interest in
Exactly.
this decision. Now, although South Korea's anti-abortion laws are set to be repealed by the end of 2020, many of the details are still up for debate. For one, a consensus still needs to be reached on the maximum number of weeks into a pregnancy within which abortions will be allowed. The Constitutional Court suggested that the bar be set at 22 weeks, just over 5 months. The court's recommendation reflects the view that a 22-week time window is sufficient for a woman to make a firm, independent decision on her pregnancy and childbirth, and also that a fetus more than 22 weeks old has a right to survive. Medically, this is usually when a fetus can start surviving on its own without the mother. Countries around the world where abortion is legal have set different time windows within which women can seek an abortion. But some say there shouldn't be any time limit at all. So what's your take on that?
Well, for women's rights activists, gender equality for them can only exist if a woman has a right to choose.
No matter how much long into her pregnancy?
For many, yes.
For many. Mm-hmm. Okay.
I mean, we're still talking about human life. I mean, I'm in favor of abortion, but I feel uncomfortable that if we can kill a baby, we can live, and after 22 weeks, the baby can start to feel pain. In France, France was the first country to legalize abortion, and the limit is 12 weeks.
Right.
It's much earlier than 22 weeks. Of course, women should have the right to do what they want with their body, but maybe there is a price to a certain stage where we're talking about another human life. And I think it's important to have a clear limit.
And you?
Yeah, I mean, the Constitutional Court in its ruling says clearly that they mark a 22-week period as a good standard as well, because after that time the baby can live independently of the mother, and before that you can't see the baby as a different entity, living entity, apart from the mother. I think that's a very rational and very well-motivated standpoint. And I think there has to be, in the end, a borderline or a standard where you can do abortion and after which you can't. I mean, I think that's very important.
Then, in your respective countries, what options do women have if they would like an abortion but have already passed that limit set by the country?
In the Netherlands, it's 24 weeks.
24 weeks.
And if you want to do an abortion after that period, it's illegal. There's, apart from a few circumstances where, for example, the life of the baby is hopelessly lost, there's a disease that can't be helped, or the baby is in a lot of pain. In that case, or there's a danger to the mother's life as well. I mean, in that case, it's like medically proven cases where it's very serious. Then after a certain protocol, you can do a late abortion, as we call it. But in all other circumstances, it's illegal, and you can be prosecuted.
Okay, and in France?
So in France, it's similar with, except for the limits, it's similar with Netherlands. You cannot have an abortion after 12 weeks unless there is a health risk for the mother. So many women actually pass that deadline. So approximately every year we have 1,000 women, French women, who get abroad to get an abortion, who go abroad, usually in Spain, because it's a neighboring country where the limit is 22 weeks, I think.
Okay, so going abroad where the limit is held later. What about in the US?
In the United States, it's complicated because every state is a little different. So most states set the limit at 20 to 24 weeks, but there are some that push it as high as 28 weeks. And there are even 7 or so, I think 7, that have no limit at all. So if a woman is past the limit in her own state, she can travel to another state.
So similar to France, except that you're just going interstate as opposed to another country. Now, just like the US, France, and the Netherlands, most of the OECD member countries have legalized abortions, whether it be for socioeconomic reasons or at the choice of the pregnant women. Many of these countries went through conflicts and some deep soul-searching of their own before abortion became legal. How did the US come about legalizing abortion?
So in 1973, there was the landmark case Roe v. Wade. And so that legalized abortion nationwide. And in the United States, even though that court case is pretty broadly supported among the general public, abortion is still one of the most controversial, divisive issues in our country. So when you start talking about different moral scenarios or gestational limits, it gets very complicated.
Right. What about in France?
So in France, in the 70s, there was a strong feminist movement to legalize abortion. And in 73, there were 343 women who signed a petition or op-ed saying, we got an abortion.
Okay.
And we think it should not be illegal. And among them, in 75, the government decided to legalize. And the woman who was in charge of passing the law is Simone Weil. She's a Nazi camp survivor. She's a very strong, very brave woman who became somehow a feminist icon because what she did with this abortion law. And she received a lot of insult and attack, vicious attacks by conservatives at the time. But still, she held her ground and she passed the law, and that was in 75. And at the time, the limit was after 10 weeks of pregnancy, and it's only until in 2002 that the law finally, they extend that to 12 weeks. So there were still in France some conservatives who somehow opposed to abortion, but now abortion is really considered accepted, and it's not such a big issue.
Do you think that time limit will be pushed even further, beyond 12 weeks?
Maybe it's possible, yes, because there is people who say that 12 weeks is too short, and that's why we still have 5,000 women who go to get abortion abroad every year. So yeah, it's possible.
Okay, and what about in the Netherlands?
Yeah, so there was a big debate as well in the 70s and 80s. There was a big feminist group who went to the streets and with the slogan "Boss of your own belly," and they had a lot of influence. And in the end, there were two members of parliament, who one of them was a doctor himself. He started to make a law. It passed the parliament, but it didn't pass the Senate. And then a few years later, another law was put in front of the parliament, and that passed with 2 votes difference. So it was still very very debated. Yeah, but now I mean, so many years later, it's accepted countrywide. Of course, there are still, especially religious groups and some small conservative religious parties in the parliament who are still against it.
Okay. Now, the next question is for you, Anne. Many Republican U.S. presidents have traditionally, in the past, held an anti-abortion stance, and President Donald Trump has proven to be no exception. The U.S. states of Ohio and Georgia have recently passed a 6-week abortion ban bill, dubbed the Heartbeat Bill, because 5 to 6 weeks is when you can start picking up the fetal heartbeat. Women's rights activists have denounced the move, saying that it's no different from banning abortion altogether. What are your thoughts on this? It seems to be going against the general trend, the global trend regarding abortion.
Right, it does go against the global trend. But in the United States, because of the way our political system works, oftentimes these sort of social issues are legislated in waves. So right now, a lot of state governments are controlled by Republicans. So we're seeing a lot of bills proposed like this. So in Ohio and Georgia, the 6-week fetal heartbeat bill is really controversial because at that stage of pregnancy, a lot of women don't even know that they're pregnant.
Sure.
So there has been backlash, and we've seen protesters who are dressing up like the character in The Handmaid's Tale, which is that dystopian novel where childbearing women are enslaved. We've seen celebrities who are boycotting or signing a petition to boycott filming in those
states?
Yeah. Also, several states have enacted trigger laws. So these are basically preemptive measures that will criminalize abortion if Roe v. Wade gets overturned. And oftentimes there's a big chance that these laws will be struck down or blocked in court. And they know this, but the lawmakers behind them want to get them to the point where they go to the Supreme Court, and then hopefully they can overturn Roe v. Wade.
Okay, let's now discuss more about the finer details that still need to be worked out. With the country's abortion ban set to be lifted, South Korea's medical community has stressed the need to better educate the public as well as the doctors regarding abortion.
수련이들이 안전한 임신 중지에 대한 충분한 교육을 받고 경험을 쌓은 뒤 배출될 수 있도록, 그리고 임신 중지가 필요한 사람들이 쉽고 안전하게 서비스를 찾을 수 있도록 해야 할 것입니다.
What can the South Korean society do to better prepare itself with it moving forward into a future of legalized abortion?
Well, I think it's important to look at best practices in other countries, where the making of an abortion law is the start of a process where you also improve education in schools, where you improve the information campaigns on contraceptives. And finally, I think if you look at the Netherlands, for example, when making the law, you can also include elements that make for a better decision. So we in the Netherlands, it's by law, you discuss it with the doctor. That's the starting process of the process. And then you have to take a period of 5 days to have time to reconsider your decision.
When it comes to the waiting period, I'm not sure how effective that is. Most women know whether they want an abortion or not. And they can't be, unless they're threatened, like criminally threatened, their minds can't be changed. They already know. And you know, abortion happens because in most cases, the vast majority of cases, the pregnancy was unintended and unwanted.
Right.
So I think that shows how important education is and teaching safe sex and contraception.
Okay. Now let's have a look at some numbers on abortion in South Korea. The number of surgical abortions in South Korea has fallen dramatically over the past decade, with an estimated 240,000 cases in 2008 down to 50,000 in 2017. Are you concerned that this number will be on the uprise after abortion is legalized?
But these numbers are the official ones, right? Because when you talk to NGOs and some professors, they come up with widely different numbers. Because it's very difficult to evaluate the real number of...
precisely because it's illegal.
Exactly. And I think the New York Times quoted a professor in Daejeon who she gave the number of 500,000 abortions a year.
500,000.
But anyway, to answer your question, it's difficult to know, but in France, after the abortion was legalized, we didn't see a huge spike in the number of abortions. It's just the number of abortions stays the same. It's just now it's safer for women and women are better protected.
Okay, Jeroen?
The same in the Netherlands. So after the law was passed, there was just a slight change in the number of abortions, just went up a little bit. And I think when you look at the situation in South Korea, I mean, I agree with what you said, and also, I mean, the number of childbearing women has decreased significantly. So you would expect the official number to decrease.
Anyway. Okay.
Yeah, in the United States, abortion is on the decline, even though it's legal. And Korea has a higher abortion rate than the United States has. So just because abortion is made legal doesn't mean everyone's going to be running to get an abortion. And actually, the countries with the highest abortion rates have the strictest abortion laws.
Right. That is the irony. Now, then there's the issue of health insurance. Right now, South Korea's national health insurance scheme covers the medical bills for women who have an abortion due to the special circumstances that we mentioned earlier, incest, rape, or health reasons. So the question now is on whether the coverage should be expanded to include abortions of choice or abortions due to socioeconomic reasons. On which side do you cast your vote?
Okay, in France, it's covered by national health insurance.
Even if it's
abortion cost. Yeah, even if your choice, yes. And my position, but this is really my personal opinion, I think that should be covered. That being said, I think Korea is still a conservative country, and the new law will create such a backlash that maybe like feminists should pick a fight at a time, and maybe in the first, it was not the case in France at the beginning, by the way. It became covered by the national insurance after many years.
Right.
Maybe Korea could choose a similar path, and in the meantime, there is a lot of NGOs, associations who could step up and help women who cannot cover this cost. Because, I mean, there will be a huge conservative backlash in Korea, and I'm not sure you can have the most liberal law some people here are dreaming of.
Not at one go.
Exactly, maybe, yeah.
But it's not fair that only the wealthiest women could get abortions, right? The socioeconomic burden of raising a child is so huge, and for already low-income women to have to face that because abortion is not covered by their insurance scheme. I don't think it makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the whole idea is to prevent women going to unhealthy clinics to have an abortion, and not covering it would maybe, I don't know, could send them the same way instead of going to a certified clinic and doing it in a healthy manner. So I think the principle should be helping them in that way, and that would be also in the spirit of the decision of the Constitutional Court, I think.
Okay. Now, the Constitutional Court's decision had also had a ripple effect in the OBGYN community. Shortly after the court's ruling, a South Korean doctor filed an online petition to the message board of the presidential Blue House, expressing conscientious objection to the country's move to legalize abortion. The doctor in question said that he will never be able to perform an abortion due to his strong convictions. What's your stance on doctors who deny abortions or who choose not to perform abortion surgeries because of their own moral or religious convictions?
It's very difficult. I mean, are doctors in South Korea all employed by the state?
No.
So in that case, I would say that they are free to choose their own way. I think hospitals should make sure they have staff available that are willing to perform an abortion, but they don't have to force every staff member to do this, because it's a very difficult moral issue. But in other countries where doctors are all paid by the state, like civil servants, I think they should follow the law.
Then do you think in Korea, for the hospitals that are funded by the government, doctors working on those clinics should perform the surgery regardless of their personal belief?
No, I mean, if the hospital can guarantee that there are enough staff members available at any time to perform the abortion when needed, I think they can take a liberal stance in this, because there are other doctors in the country that aren't obliged to do that. So that would be a little bit unfair, just because you're working at a state-funded hospital. But if it would be different if all doctors would be paid by the state, I guess, because then it's like being a civil servant, I guess.
Okay, so this is the closing question. Before that, I will have a look at a survey result. In 2018, there was a survey on women who either had or have considered an abortion. Half of the respondents in that survey said that they did so. They considered an abortion or they had an abortion due to financial reasons or work and academic commitments. So what can South Korea do as a society to foster an environment where women in vulnerable socioeconomic positions who would like to continue on with their pregnancy can be supported in that decision?
I mean, it's no surprise that Korea is a country which is one of the highest abortion rate in the world. It's because it's a very tough country to raise kids. The competition is really high. Raising kids costs a lot of money. If you're not married, you have a huge discrimination facing you because you decide to keep your child. So, yeah, I mean, of course, I mean, it's not even related to abortion, but I want Korea to be a more fair society, a place where it doesn't cost so much money to raise your kids. I mean, that's of course, obviously very, very important as well, yes. So when you get the news that you're pregnant, you can consider, even if you're single, I want to have this child, and the society will not judge me before I decide to keep this child, and the society will help me to raise it properly. Yeah, of course, that should be one goal as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, you have the same problem with, you see the same thing with the adoption statistics, that single moms are more likely to give up their child for adoption, even in a rich country like South Korea. And so one thing which could be done is increase the welfare system for single mothers that are not able to work full time, or they have a job that pays really bad, and they need some assistance, sending their kids to school or whatever. I think there's a world to win on this point.
Okay, and then?
Right. I mean, not only is South Korea a difficult place to raise a child, but it's a difficult place to be a woman. So I fully support more social services. And I think Korea has a lot of catching up to do in terms of making society a more gender equal place.
All right. Okay, we'll have to wrap it up there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your insight.
Thank you.
Abortion is one of the most sensitive and polarizing issues in our society today, where a middle ground has often been difficult to find. The only thing we know for sure is that after 2020, abortion will no longer be illegal in South Korea. With that being said, we will need to improve the legal and regulatory framework on abortion to best minimize friction surrounding this issue. That's all we have for this week. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye.